MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Eloise Tencher. Eloise hosts a radio program, owns 2 restaurants in Middletown, and is on a quest to resolve issues regarding her son's death, a story she will bravely share with us. So welcome, Eloise.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And as I've mentioned already, you recently lost a son.
Yes.
And you are determined to seek justice for the circumstances surrounding his death.
Yes.
So if you'd like to share some of that story.
My son, Philip Shaw, was a top-ranked rock climber, and he did bouldering, which is without the ropes. He was at a gathering in Brooklyn, New York, where he lived. Just a, small gathering in somebody's apartment, and someone came in with a homemade drug, and someone slipped it into his drink in that group of people. And his body wasn't used to these drugs, and he went into an instant coma. He was able to find a chair and just sit there, and he passed out, and 3 weeks later he died. The people with him went to bed. The next day they got up, they went to work. 16 or 18 hours later, somehow the paramedics came, and it's not clear whether they dragged his body to the side of the road, and a bystander called 911. I'm not sure how that happened, but they stole his wallet and his cell phone, so he arrived at this hospital as an unknown. And the people fled, and they went to a mutual friend's apartment and in a panic, and they left the cell phone and the wallet there, and then they left, and somehow they found our number at Brubaker's in Middletown, one of our restaurants, and they were able to get the phone number and call my husband. They were calling me, but I was in Chile at the time. I had just arrived. And so my husband was, he thought the guy was kidding. He thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. He insisted, no, I need to talk to Eloise. And since I wasn't there, my husband gave him my son Billy, who lives in New York. He gave this guy the phone number, and Billy was able to go to a hospital and identify his brother. And then they found me 2 days later, and I took the first flight back to New York, and I was with my son for the next 2.5 weeks until I decided. I moved him from the hospital in Brooklyn to Columbia Presbyterian because I knew they had the best doctors there, and I wanted him to have the best. And as soon as I got there, they did an MRI, and they showed it to me, and it was evident that his brain was completely gone. And I had to make the decision to disconnect him, and it was really, really hard, but I didn't want to keep him alive anymore. For what? Just so we could go and hover around him. And so we let him go, and I was with him, and I gave him lots of hugs and kisses, and my son was there too, and just his immediate family, his cousin, his uncle, my husband, and my son's father. He had died some months prior to that in California. He wasn't present. That's how that happened. And then the police did nothing whatsoever, the Brooklyn police. I went to 2 different precincts. They didn't get him. They wanted nothing to do with us. And yet these people allowed my son to stay in a coma. Had they reacted within the first hour, perhaps they could have saved him, but they didn't. They neglected him, and they didn't seek help, and that is now I'm after justice for my son and spreading the words. I'm very open about this, and I want everybody to know that it could happen to me, it could happen to you, anybody. This does not discriminate, and these drugs are 10 times deadlier than when I was young, you know, back in the early 70s. These are serious drugs. A lot of people are dying from drug overdose.
Well, that's a heartbreaking story, and I'm sure our viewers are very interested in where you are with it now. You recently were able to make contact with someone who you think might take a second look?
Yes, yeah. I wrote some letters to the Attorney General of Connecticut, and he forwarded the letter to the Attorney General in New York, in Albany, and they made the connection to the DA's office in Brooklyn, and they called me, and I went in, and I spent an hour with them, and they actually treated me with a lot of respect and seriousness, and not like the police at the precincts that treated me like it was my fault, like I was this bum, you know. Like now we wait and see, and they said we can't promise you the results. We can promise you that we're going to try our very best to come up with some answers.
Wonderful.
And that's, I feel pretty good about that. So we'll see what happens, but I am seeking justice, and I'm not going to stop.
And you're planning to write a story involving his grandfather?
I am in the process of writing a story about Eric Shaw, my first father-in-law, who was one of the first photographers for Time Life in the late 30s. And he emigrated from Germany with his best friends, who were Albert Einstein, Alfred Eisenstadt, and Igor Stravinsky. And these four guys lived together in this apartment in Brooklyn, trying to start a new life. And so we all know where Einstein went. And then Eric, my father-in-law, with Eisenstadt, they got hired by Time Life. And Eric, his job was to travel around the world, photographing the arts and sciences. And so he became very good friends with people like Chagall, Picasso, Dali, all the people from that era. He had been invited to Iran as a guest of the Shah of Iran. You know, not too many people nowadays know about the Shah of Iran. But he had a very exciting life, and I am writing a story about that, and I'm interviewing ghostwriters, because I want to make a play, because I think that if they can make a sensation out of the life of Hamilton, this is even a more exciting life, because it's got these eccentric people, these artists, you know. And so I'm aiming high, but now I'm also starting to write about Philip's life, because he had all this excitement, you know, the growing up, you know, with a father who was an Olympic skier from Switzerland, and his famous grandfather, and then he became famous, and then the tragic death. I'm writing a lot.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you also enjoy doing art in your spare time?
Yes. I do art. It's my therapy, and I crave it. I really like painting, and I'm alone with my thoughts, and it's really, it's a lot of fun. I don't know if I'm very good or bad, but I like it, and it hangs in my restaurants. That's good. It keeps me positive rather than sinking into a hole of depression and grief. I don't want that. My son wouldn't want that. I have my moments, let me tell you. But I try to stay positive and go to work. I'm into a lot of things, so, you know.
Well, let's talk about your restaurants. I thought it was very interesting that you had said you had some brief experience working in a restaurant, vowed you'd never do that again. And here you are
Yes.
with your husband owning your primary site there, and then also a smaller cafe, right? Both
Yes.
of them right on the main street in
Yes.
in Middletown.
In Middletown, Brew Bakers and Brew
Mhm.
Bakers Cafe.
You describe your leadership style as one of demonstrating your willingness to get in there and do whatever needs to be done.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, leading by example.
Yes.
Yes.
And the importance of setting a happy tone,
Yes.
even if it requires acting.
Yes.
Somebody's in a bad way, bad mood,
Yeah, no,
leave it at the door.
exactly.
And how do you think that contributes to a successful business in terms of how customers respond to that?
Because I'm adamant about that, about when you're here, you have to, if you're in a bad mood, you have to be an actress and be a good actress and pretend that you're enjoying it and having a good time. So the kids that work for me have been really great, and it's a happy environment. It's a beautiful space, and with all these windows, and people come to have a good time. And if they see that the staff is happy and friendly, they are going to have a good experience. And if they encounter people who are moody and showing it, I don't want to go to a place like that. That, along with the good food, people like to go. You know, it's a safe place. It's a beautiful space, and we play great music. Kind of like a European feel in the main restaurant. The other restaurant is a lot smaller, more of an artsy Latin kind of artwork, Latin tapestries, you know, from Argentina, Peru, Chile, you know, and clay artifacts and different feels. Pretty much the same restaurant, but different feels.
And you also talked about the importance of addressing issues right away as an employer, not
Yes.
to let things kind of
Yes,
bubble,
right away.
bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. You see a problem, you address it right away. Very important. You do it in a non-threatening way. You know, you can't go and bark at someone. You have to go and be direct and strong, but with respect. And it's very doable. You treat people like you want to be treated. That's it, you know. And you can say anything, good or bad, but in a good tone, you know, so that they don't feel like they're attacked, you know. And some people have a hard time doing that, but I was raised like that, you know. My parents always said, you know, it's you don't have to be their best friend, but you have to respect them and say anything with respect. And sometimes, believe me, I just want to scream and just throw something, you know. But no, you can't act like that. You have to be in control.
And your husband, a world-renowned chef in his own right,
Yes.
right, from
Yeah,
Austria.
Yeah, from Salzburg.
So he is the one that's cooking up all that good food or directing all that?
Yes, he is. He was named one of the best chefs in America, and he's been here 10 years. And he came from Cavi's restaurant in Manchester, where he was pastry chef. And there he met our other chef that's really a great chef, and he was the head French chef for about 32 years at Cavi's, and Mike Leister, and he's a fabulous chef also. So you have these great chefs teaching these younger people, these younger aspiring chefs, you know, and how to make this wonderful stuff. And we have a lot of fun. We laugh a lot. We laugh all the time, you know. It's just a lot of fun, you know. And me, who had vowed I would never work in a restaurant because I hated working, because I had worked and I hated it. Now we've been there for 9 years, and it's a lot of fun, you know. So.
And hard work.
A lot of hard work. And you can never just say, I'll never do something, because you might just end up doing that.
Yeah, and you might just end up sitting next to someone on an airplane that you end up marrying.
Exactly.
Right?
Like my husband,
Yes.
Yeah, he was coming to run the New York Marathon, and he was the last the last passenger on this plane leaving Zurich, Switzerland. And I was coming back from a little vacation, and he sat next to me. He was the last seat available, and that was his. And I was hoping nobody would sit next to me so that I could kind of stretch out and sleep.
But life had other ideas.
Life had other ideas,
Okay.
and next thing, 2 years later, we were married. So, and he spoke no English, nothing, only German. And I spoke a little bit of German. It was fun.
And you talk about having music and art in your restaurants, and you are the host of a music show through Wesleyan's,
Yes.
right, channel?
Wesleyan University Radio.
Mhm.
My show is International Music Hour, and all the music that I play in my radio show, I run a CD and I play at my restaurant. And so it works out, and it's all world music, and I listen to my staff, these local kids, singing and humming this music from France and Germany and wherever. They don't know what they're saying or what they're, but their lives musically are expanding, and it's really pretty neat to see how those horizons are expanding from people that would otherwise not have any exposure to all that culture, really.
Right. And you, I understand, were born here, raised in Chile, and then went to college in Switzerland?
Yes.
So you kind of been in a lot of places and had wonderful influences, I'm sure.
Yeah, my mom was from Chile. And so when I was 2, we moved. My dad was an American guy from Chicago, and he wanted to go to Chile, and so when I was 15, we moved back to the States. My English was really bad, and I went to a private school in Waterbury because we moved to Connecticut, and I was a disaster. The classes would go forward, and I would slip more and more behind, and it was a big gap, and oh my God, it was a disaster. But I did my 4 years there, and then I went to Switzerland for college, and that was amazing.
A lot of resilience on your part to get through that, being a teenager in a new place and not finding it
It was really tough.
easy.
I cried for 6 months.
Yeah.
I left. I was 15. You don't uproot kids at 15. That's a terrible age. From one culture to another. It was really, what we did in Chile was totally different to what my peers here in the States were doing. We would go to parties at people's houses and dance. Here, no, you didn't dance. You just went and hung out. And that was like...
And Eloise was dancing.
And Eloise wanted to dance, and nobody danced, you know. And I had a lot of adjustments.
And we do tend to get wiser as we age, right?
Yes.
You can look back at your teenage self. You can look back going to college in Switzerland. And now this incredible journey you're on with your son, totally unexpected. I mean, there's the highs and the lows.
Yes.
When you think back to your younger self, what advice might you give, say, in your 20s and your 40s?
To young people?
Well, if you're thinking of yourself, but absolutely too, yeah.
Well, what I learned from experience was if you are in a situation that's a bad situation, the worst thing you can do is panic. Again, you have to be an actor. You have to pretend that you're strong and that they are not scaring you, and you just kind of ward them off by being strong, and I'm not going to let you hurt me, and by your strength, they kind of back off. And I learned that through really avoiding some really tough experiences that could have ended up in death.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. It was because I was so strong that my life was spared.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost got gang raped at Kennedy Airport coming back from Switzerland when I was 21 at like 3 in the morning. Suddenly, and back then there was no security.
Mm-hmm.
We had phone booths, you know, and my plane was 13 hours late in arriving, and my parents had gone back home because the airlines said that they would put me in a hotel, which I didn't. So I was alone in the terminal, and suddenly these 4 guys, big guys, came, and they started talking to me, and they wanted to take me into this little room and talk. And I said, no, I'm leaving, and get out of my way. I was so strong. And finally, they just backed off, and they disappeared. And, I mean, that would never happen nowadays with all the security.
Mm-hmm.
But being strong is what helped me, what has helped me my entire life.
Even when you don't feel it necessarily, like even a small thing like starting the radio show, right? You had some fears about...
Oh, I was petrified.
Yeah. Yep.
But I did it, and now it's a piece of cake, and I've been at it about 8 years now. And sometimes I even teach people how to do it, you know, which is kind of funny. But you just have to persist and try to get to the other side of that fear. You know, but that is my advice. If you are ever in a situation that is a scary situation, you have to be strong so you can get out of that.
Even if it requires acting.
Acting,
Right.
exactly.
Fake it till you make
Exactly, exactly. And then you can freak out all you want. But at the moment, you have to be in control.
And I imagine that's helping you with this quest that you're on with your son and not giving up, and people probably
I'm not giving
pick up on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not to be dismissed.
Yeah. Definitely. I definitely want to send a message that this doesn't discriminate, and anybody can get a hit of some drug and like my son slip into a coma if your body isn't used to that. Because I'm sure all these other people, maybe they did the drugs. I really don't know.
Right.
But I would guess, and they went to work the next day, but that tells me that they were conditioned to this, but not my son.
Well, I wish you every good path ahead in terms of finding some resolution and some sense that people are taking it seriously and trying to get answers, and, you know, and that way you can honor your son as well, as well as carrying on, right?
Carrying on. Life goes on, and you have to try to be positive.
And I always end with a quote. And would you share with the audience what your favorite saying is, your mom's mantra?
My mom, who today would have been 100, she always said to me, honey, better alone than badly accompanied. It is so true. You know, and I have stuck to that, and I've passed it on to whoever wants to hear it, and I think it's such a simple message, but it's so true.
Well, thank you so much, Eloise,
for
sharing your story.
Yeah.
And look forward to hearing how things, you know, progress for you. And please tune in to hear other fascinating women on future segments of MidLIFE Matter. Georgian Lussier, your host. Thanks for joining us.